The hospital sat quiet at the edge of Oregon's national forest, tucked between snow-heavy trees and winding roads that barely made it onto maps. Inside room 214, Era Quinn, 7 years old and silent as snowfall, was wheeled in. Her skin was pale, nearly translucent, and her breath barely stirred the plastic tubing beside her. For days, she hadn't spoken, hadn't blinked at light or sound. Her mother, Mara, a former elementary school teacher who had given up everything to sit beside her, stopped asking questions and started counting breaths instead. It was all that felt real anymore. Outside the window, snow drifted in slow spirals. Machines hummed low and steady. The air held the weight of waiting. No one expected what would happen next. Not when a black and white shape appeared at the end of the hallway, quiet, low to the ground, and moving with unsettling purpose. The security cameras never saw where it came from. One moment the hall was empty. The next, it was there, perhaps drawn by a force beyond understanding, as if summoned by Era's silent plea. A stray German shepherd, soaked with snow melt and eyes gleaming with something too aware, paused outside room 214. Then, as if summoned, he stepped inside. The hallway outside room 214 had long been the quietest stretch in the hospital. Even the most seasoned nurses avoided lingering there. So, when a black and white shape emerged from the end of the corridor, soaked with snow, silent, steady, no one stopped him. Cameron, the night nurse, was the first to see him. The dog walked calmly, as if he belonged. When he passed her, she felt a strange warmth in her chest, as if someone had just whispered, "Let him through." She did. Inside the room, Era Quinn lay still. Machines pulsed quietly around her, glowing pale green and blue. Her mother, Mara, sat half asleep in the recliner, her body draped in a hospital blanket. The door creaked. Mara looked up and froze. For a moment, she couldn't move. A stray dog stood in her daughter's hospital room. That should have terrified her, but it didn't. 12 years ago, Mara had raised a German shepherd named Toby from puppyhood. He had been her best friend, her shadow, her comfort through grief, through single motherhood, through everything. He had passed away just 2 winters ago. The dog before her looked almost identical. Same fur, same eyes, the same stillness. When he looked at her, something shifted in Mara's chest. Her breath caught. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But in her heart, something opened. She nodded just once, as if that was all the dog had been waiting for. He stepped forward quietly, confidently. He climbed onto the mattress with practiced care and laid down beside Era. Then, slowly, he placed one paw on top of her tiny open hand. Nothing happened, and then it did. Era's fingers curled ever so slightly. Her voice cracked the silence. "You really came." Initially, no one planned to let the dog stay. Hospital protocols were clear: no animals on patient mattresses, especially in critical care. But as Orion settled beside Era, a sense of calm filled the room, challenging the rigidity of rules. But room 214 had stopped following protocol a long time ago. It had been moved to palliative care just 36 hours earlier. Her organs were slowing. Her brain showed almost no response. Dr. Hale had delivered the update himself, voice low and clinical. Mara hadn't argued. She hadn't even cried, just nodded numb. So, when the dog appeared, this quiet, solemn creature with eyes that seemed to understand more than any human in the room, no one had the energy left to protest. It was a nurse named Sienna who said it first, whispered, "Really, if he's what's keeping her here, just let him stay." No one disagreed. So Orion stayed. At first, he simply lay beside her, unmoving, unblinking. Then came the twitch of her fingers, the whispered words. And within hours, her heart rhythm began to stabilize. By morning, her oxygen levels had risen. Her pupils were reactive. The neurologist team, once mechanical and dispassionate, now gathered at the doorway, hushed and unsure. "She's responding to something," Dr. Hale murmured, staring at the monitor. "I just don't know what." By the second night, he didn't hesitate when security raised concerns about the dog still being in the room. He signed a clearance himself. "She's dying," he said. "If this dog is helping, he stays." No questions. No one asked again. And somehow, the longer Orion remained, the more present Era became. She began tracking voices with her eyes. She squeezed Mara's fingers. She responded to light. It was subtle, slow, but it was there. She was coming back. On the morning of the third day, she sat up with help. Her voice, still faint, was clear when she looked at Mara and asked, "Can I have some applesauce?" Mara dropped the spoon in shock. Nurses cried openly in the hallway. No one dared call him Miracle. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, they started calling her by name again. Era, not the child in 214. Staff paused outside the room, some pressing their palms to the glass. Not to check vitals, just to witness, because something real was happening. Not a cure, not a theory, but a reason to hope. And in room 214, that had become enough. By the end of the week, Era was no longer the child everyone had quietly expected to lose. She sat upright for hours now, sometimes sketching with crayons one of the nurses had brought. Other times, just staring out. The window, Orion's head resting comfortably in her lap. But something else had begun to shift. At first, it was barely noticeable. Only the night staff mentioned it. The temperature in room 214 always dropped after midnight, no matter how high the thermostat was set. One nurse claimed she saw the room lights dim without anyone touching the switch. Another swore she heard the faint sound of whispering when she passed the door. Orion noticed it too. He stopped sleeping through the night. Instead, he sat upright for hours, posture alert, gaze fixed on the far left corner of the room, the one cloaked in shadows cast by the heart monitor. Mara saw it first. She woke one night to find Orion still and rigid, his eyes locked onto that dark corner. When she whispered his name, he didn't respond. His ears twitched, muscles tight. He was listening, or maybe waiting. The next day, a new nurse, Ava, came in for routine vitals. Young and unfamiliar with the odd energy of room 214, she entered with practiced cheer. "Good morning, Era," she smiled. Valera spoke before she could continue. "Hey, she doesn't sleep like we do." The room fell silent. Ava blinked, thrown off by the girl's tone. Calm, steady, far older than her years. Mara looked up sharply from her chair, startled. Era's fingers moved slowly through Orion's fur, her face unreadable. Later that afternoon, Dr. Hale returned with a new set of brain scans. Progress continued. Cortical activity was increasing in areas once considered unreachable. But he had begun documenting something else too, Orion's behavior. In his private notes, he scribbled things no medical journal would ever print. Dog alert at 3:12. Patient stared into corner. Temperature drop again. He didn't know what to make of it, but he felt it too. There was something in the room, or maybe something watching it. It happened on the 7th night. The snow outside had thickened into a silent, suffocating curtain. Inside room 214, the air was still, heavy, not with fear, but with something waiting. Era was asleep, her small hand resting lightly on Orion's back. Mara dozed in the recliner, wrapped in her wool cardigan. The room was dim, except for the green pulse of the heart monitor. At 3:14 a.m., Orion rose. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stood, muscles tense, ears forward. His gaze returned to the same corner. This time, he moved one slow step then another. He positioned himself between Era and the shadowed corner, tail stiff, head low. Mara stirred awake, sensing the shift. She sat up quickly, heart thudding. "Era," she whispered. The girl didn't stir, but then the lights buzzed. One flickered, then popped. Glass cracked. The room plunged into a faint, trembling darkness, and Era began to convulse. Her back arched, her mouth opened in a silent scream. The monitor shrieked, heart rate erratic, oxygen levels crashing. Mara screamed for help, slamming the call button. No one came. In the flickering shadows, Orion lunged, and he didn't hit a wall. He didn't hit air. He hit something. The sound was a guttural snarl, ripped from deep inside him. He attacked nothing visible, but with purpose. His body slammed the empty space near the corner again and again, claws scraping tile. And then, gasps. The lights stabilized. The machine steadied. The air shifted, warmer, lighter, breathable again. Dr. Hale burst into the room, eyes wide, taking in the broken light, the chaos, the girl's limp body cradled in Mara's arms, and the dog standing between them in the corner, his back arched, teeth bared at nothing. "What happened?" he asked. No one answered. Era whimpered. Then, in the softest voice, she whispered into her mother's chest, "Didn't let it take me." The snow had begun to melt, but room 214 still felt like winter, even with the heater humming. There was a chill that clung to the corners, a tension that hadn't lifted since the night the light shattered. Era hadn't spoken much since. She answered when asked, nodded sometimes, smiled, but there was something quieter in her now, like she was listening to things no one else could hear. Mara noticed it first, the way Era would glance toward the same shadowed corner before falling asleep. How she traced circles on Orion's fur with absent fingers. How she no longer hummed when the room was silent, but only when the dog growled low in his throat. "She's changed," one nurse said softly. "It's not just the healing, it's like she's carrying something." Dr. Hale had begun visiting without the clipboard. He stayed longer, leaned in more. Not because he expected medical updates, there were none, but because something about the room asked for silence. Then, one morning, Era looked up from her blanket and asked, "Do names have power?" Mara paused, coffee halfway to her lips. "Sometimes," she said slowly. "What?" Era didn't answer, but that night, it happened again. Orion was the first to move, ears twitching, tail stiff. The lights dimmed slightly. The temperature dropped. Mara pulled the blanket tighter around her. "What's wrong?" she whispered. Era didn't look scared. She looked ready. "It's back," she said. Orion rose from the bed, the same stance, the same place, facing the corner. And then, without turning, Era spoke. "If I say its name, it can't stay." Mara froze. Her mother's heart screamed, "No, don't invite it, don't draw it near." But her eyes saw the steadiness in her daughter, the calmness in Orion. "What name, Era?" The child's fingers tightened around Orion's fur. She whispered a sound, sharp, fractured like broken glass and old stone. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything Mara had heard before. The lights dimmed further. The air snapped cold, and Orion barked, not like before. This time, it was thunder, a shattering, commanding, furious bark. And the silence broke. Something lifted, like the air had been compressed and suddenly released. Mara gasped and fell back into the pillows. She was shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Mara rushed to her side. "What did you do? What was that?" Era opened her eyes slowly. Her voice was soft but firm. "I said what it didn't want me to know." "And what was that?" "Its name?" She said, and now it can't hide. Orion returned to the bed, curling beside her, one paw protectively over her chest. The room finally felt warm. In the quiet days after the night, everything changed. Era's room became more than a hospital suite. It became a place no one could quite explain. Her recovery was documented, measured, but never understood. Doctors used words like spontaneous remission, neurological reactivation, and unexpected cellular regeneration. But all of them knew none of those terms explained what had happened in room 214, and none explained Orion. So they stopped trying. Instead, they watched as Era went from comatose to conscious, from silent to smiling. Watched as her body healed faster than anyone thought possible. And always, Orion was beside her, quiet, guarded, a presence no longer questioned. One afternoon, days before discharge, Dr. Hale sat beside Mara, a sealed envelope in hand. "This was dropped off anonymously at the front desk," he said. "I think it's about him." Mara opened it slowly. Inside was a photo, old, sun-faded. A girl no older than Era stood in the snow, with a German shepherd by her side. Not just any dog. Same deep eyes, same upright ears, same proud stance. On the back of the photo, 1952, room 214. He saved her too. The resemblance was uncanny, suggesting a guardian that transcended time. Mara looked up, eyes wide. This can't be possible. Dr. Hale leaned forward. "That's not all." I did some digging. Every decade, at least once, room 214 gets a patient with an unexplained remission tied to a black and white dog. No one registered him. Every time he appears, every time he vanishes after. But why? Mara whispered. Why now? She answered that question herself later that evening. He didn't come for me, she said. He came because it came back. The shadow. She nodded. It's old, and it waits in quiet places. Places where people stop believing they'll be seen. That's when it feeds. But Orion, he remembers it. He's fought it before. He lost someone once, so now he waits. Mara stared. You mean he's not just a dog? Era shook her head. He's more, or maybe not more than a dog, just more than time. That night, Orion stood once more in the corner. Not rigid, not ready to fight, but watching like he always had. The lights didn't flicker, the cold didn't return. The room was finally still, and so was he. On discharge day, the hospital hallways felt unusually quiet. Era walked slowly, bundled in her pink coat, Orion at her side. Staff stood quietly as she passed. No applause, no speeches, just reverence. At the door, Mara turned to Dr. Hale. Will he go with us? Dr. Hale looked at the dog, then back at Era. He came for her. I think he'll stay until she doesn't need him anymore. Era knelt, pressing her forehead to Orion's. You remembered me, she whispered. And perhaps he had. Perhaps they had met before, in another life, another fight, another room where a child had been slipping away. Maybe some spirits come back, not as ghosts, but as guardians. And maybe love, when it's deep enough, transcends time, flesh, and even species. Orion stood silent as ever. He didn't wag, he didn't bark, but he walked beside her. Not as a pet, not as a therapy dog, but as something older, something sentient. And in that final moment, as the doors opened and they stepped into the light, Mara turned back one last time. Room 214 stood quiet, but somehow not.